Hi, Becky.
Hi, Kevin didn't pick up,
Okay,
but I emailed and left him a message, and I'm going to text him now too.
okay, cool, thanks. Sorry I didn't think of this earlier.
That's okay. Me too.
Hey, George. Hi, Susie.
Hey there.
One, two, three.
Yes. Hey, Melody. So Jim Hemingway is the only one not here yet.
Okay, well, we
He's
can,
almost always first.
yeah. Well, we can go ahead. We've got everybody else. We can call a meeting to order. Okay, and Becky, you think Walter might be with us shortly or for the
Yeah.
fire budget
He
review?
said he was going to be here about 6:30, so any minute.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, we can go through the minutes of our last meeting. That's good for everybody.
That's a good idea.
Everybody have a chance to take a look?
I did not get them. I looked for them.
You didn't get them.
Okay, I'll resend them to you, Bob.
Okay, thanks.
I should let you know, I did update. There were a bunch of errors in the attendance list. Susie alerted me to this, so that has been fixed in my version. The only non-members present were Ellen McKay, Tim Hunting, and Mike Vinsky. Everybody else has been dropped from that list.
Including me.
Uh,
No,
No, you were
last
there.
ones I got were 12-1. Is that accurate?
yeah, that's what we're discussing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're on it.
I thought we had one last week, so there was no minutes from that one. Okay, fine.
You know what, Bob? On these joint meetings where it's like not our meeting, but it's us sitting in with the select board. I haven't been doing separate minutes for them because they have a pretty, like, their minutes are even more thorough than ours. So rather than have like duplicate versions of the minutes for the same meeting,
Well, now I understand why I didn't get them.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
Well, Walter's here.
Walter's here.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have any amendments. Everything looked pretty good to me in the body of the.
Yep. Me
Yeah,
too.
the only item I saw was right at the, well, there's a couple items right at the end. On 7.
Mhm.
Is it called 7? 7, the committee reports, and the last item B, at the end, it says HVAC project.
Oh, yeah. Boy. Does anybody recall what
Yeah,
the update was
yeah,
on that?
I'm thinking that we maybe just mentioned that it will be funded through the CARES funding. I think Becky confirmed. Is that what that was about?
No, I think Bob was asking about that, and the funding is through town meeting, unless we can get it covered by CARES. We can't do CARES, but the new money, the American.
And when I look at this B,
I'm
what it
only
says,
talking about the engineering, and what we're hoping to have by the new money is the full project.
I think this paragraph is probably fine the way it is, though, because the very first sentence says update on 3 current projects, and then it lists the 3 projects: culvert,
Yeah.
roof, and HVAC project. We just didn't have any information about the HVAC.
I
So I think
you're
it's
right.
fine as
You're
is.
right. That reflects what
Okay.
we said.
So there was just no new information. We just.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, then,
I'm just gonna add a little parenthetical note that says no new information next to the HVAC project.
Yeah,
Okay,
the only other item is right underneath that for December 14, that should be library and fire as opposed to
oh, yes.
highway
of
and
course.
police.
Yeah,
Good catch.
okay.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
Wait,
Okay.
I have a change that I'd like AJ to make.
Yeah.
On F, where it says JH, this has to do with the post office.
Which number is this?
F.
Item one.
Under which section?
Item 1F, okay.
Item 1F. I don't
Yes.
have, okay.
Yeah.
Could you say instead that Ellen says she is not equipped to handle the ways Shutesbury could take advantage of some of the techniques that the post office offers to reduce costs? I know this sounds a little complicated, but that was really what was going on. I was wondering about that. Because we
Oh, right, 'cause-
could actually do it, but we have to adopt barcoding and stuff like this.
Right, can you just repeat, I know you
Sure.
had it spelled out right.
Okay. Ellen says she is not equipped to handle the ways Shutesbury could take advantage of some of the techniques the post office offers to reduce costs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, yep, thanks.
We do have a motion to approve the amended minutes. Any further discussion? Okay, we can have a vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Archer, I.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye. Next item we've got is the fire department budget, and I see Walter's on. So if, Walter, you could walk us through your budget proposal?
Okay, there's not a lot of changes here, although there's some significant ones. Operating, proposing bumping that up another 1,000. That's simply because the
I'm sorry, excuse me, can everybody see it on the screen or not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Something looked funny. It wasn't clear. I apologize, Walter. I just wanted to.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so the operating want go up 1,000 on that because the software that I use for doing the Massachusetts Fire Incident Reporting System, which is the National Fire Incident Reporting System, is a non-supported, non-maintained software system right now. But matter of fact, the company's been sold to another company. I've been using it simply because I didn't want to pay the exorbitant amount that most of the companies want for doing this. It's something that's mandated that we have to do to the state, and all our grants and everything else, especially that come through the state, are dependent on us keeping up with this. But I'm just afraid that at some point this is going to crash and we won't have any kind of software to do that. A couple of years ago, the state decided they're going to try to put something together for everyone. We did a big study on it. All the fire chiefs chose a certain vendor. The state decided they didn't want to go with that vendor. They went with another vendor that didn't have the actual software, and they tried to create it from the police software, and it was nothing but a nightmare. And that was actually going to cost even more per year. I think the last bill I got when they were going to start billing us was like $1,600 a year just for the software, use of the software. And I could never get it to work. Wasn't necessarily their fault, but it was on the state level. So I've just been using the old Firehouse software that I have. But at some point that's going to cease to exist. So I got a quote from a company called ESO. And their cost per year is $995. Plus the first year, there's a setup cost of $595, bringing the first year to $1,400. But then it drops back to the $995 per year. So seeing we've been maxing out our operating budget, I put in $1,000 just to make that reporting software happen for the next person coming in. The big change, of course, is the maintenance, and I've been saying this for a little while now, that when I leave, unless you get somebody that has all the skills that I do the maintenance and the willingness and the desire to do it, if they can't do it or won't do it, gonna have to pay for it somehow, whether that's paying somebody to come in and do some of the maintenance, or hiring it all out, or sending trucks and having somebody come in and do on-site stuff every time something needs to be done. And you know, it's up for grabs exactly how much that's going to be, but I increased it between $7,000 and $11,000 as a proposal for making sure that the maintenance continues to get done that needs to be done. That's really the biggest change. Equipment kept the same, SCBA tanks the same, fire hose replacement the same. The turnout gear I bumped up $200 again because costs just keep going up on that. But you know, the biggest cost is the operating and the maintenance. Any questions on that?
See, Susie has her hand up.
So Walter, other towns probably have other ways of doing the maintenance. Do you have any idea? Is this number based on what other towns pay for maintenance?
Actually, I was just talking today, I think it was today or yesterday, to New Salem Wendell chief. And I think their maintenance is something like 28,000 a year for their maintenance budget for the buildings and the equipment. Yeah, it's hard to say. It depends on how things go and how things maintain and break and all that, and what this next person may be able to have skills to do or willing to do. I don't know. But that's the biggest change that I see is if somebody doesn't have the skills to do a lot of the repairs that I do in-house and you have to pay for it, it's gonna be a lot, because you're paying there anywhere between $50, $80 to $120 an hour for labor for some of the skilled stuff, plus the downtime, plus the travel time and all that. So yeah, it's kind of a guess, but it's in ballpark with what a lot of other towns are paying for their maintenance right now.
Okay, Bob,
Yeah, Walter, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at this thing and I'm seeing as a total budget for the fire department includes your pay, and I'm happy that you are a person who was capable of doing certain kind of maintenance on your vehicles, and I assume your routine maintenance you were doing in-house.
Yeah, on the vehicles, on the equipment, installing new equipment, you know, fixing.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
we're, in my view, hopefully we're getting a good deal, but we're paying you to do that. But if the next person comes along and they're not willing or able to do that, then we're not going to pay them to do that. We're going to juggle things around and have the maintenance done by bringing somebody in to work on the vehicles and the machinery, or send it out, or whatever. But I really think that we should wait until we have a fire chief to sort out what the formula should be for, his salary or her salary and the general budget. So my opinion
So
is,
are you going to be able to adjust that halfway through the year when?
well, we have a reserve account. So if we had to
Okay,
add
all
in additional maintenance for the fire department,
That's
can do
fine.
that.
I'm proposing what I think, what I feel would be prudent to do. You guys are the ones that make the final decision.
I'm just pointing out that is something there's some unknowns in here.
Oh, there's a lot of unknowns, Bob, and I'm just
Yeah.
trying to cover some of those.
Right, and so I think we can cover some unknowns within our system because we do have a reserve account. But I do think you make a good point, and it's good for us to be aware of this, because that could be a big change in the operating budget for the department. But we have to be
Absolutely.
aware of that when negotiations occur for the fire department heads' salary. So,
Right, and that's why I'm putting it here for you guys to see it and know ahead of time.
I fully appreciate that. Thanks.
That's a very strong possibility. Again, I make the proposal, you guys vote on what you want to do with it. And again, I'm looking ahead for the next person, because, if it was me doing it and I was staying here, I'd bring it up a little bit because we've maxed out the maintenance every year for the last couple of years. I still think it needs to go up no matter what. But if we're going to have to be paying somebody else to do it, it's going to go up a lot. I can tell you that.
And one other question, what's the difference? What distinguishes equipment from maintenance? And I don't understand that one.
Well, equipment is purchasing equipment, new equipment, replacement equipment. Maintenance is fixing, repairing, whether it's building maintenance, whether it's, I got to pay an electrician to come in and fix something, or a plumber to come in and fix something, or, we're fixing broken equipment or things that go wrong on the truck or things in the building that I can fix. That's the maintenance. And that's including buying the tools to do the maintenance sometimes. If a tool is just for maintenance, then, that's what it is. If it's a piece of equipment that's going to be used on the in the fire service for the fire trucks and all that, it's equipment. So yes, we have battery powered sawzalls and things like that. Those go on the truck. They're to be used on scene. We do.
Oh, I get you. Thank you.
So that all falls under equipment. But if we were buying something that's like, some putty knives or screwdrivers, we're doing, or, buying screws and bolts and things that falls under maintenance.
Great, thanks.
Susie, and
So,
then Jim.
Walter, this was a big year for the radio system, or communication system, whatever they
Yep.
call it. Did that all get completed this year?
For the most part, yes, we got all our radios that were through the grant. We got all our portables, our mobiles, our base units for both police and fire. They've been installed. We've been using them. They've been very good. This year, through 2 more grants, I'm trying to get one more mobile radio for our utility truck, which has no 800 mobile in it. And through another grant, I'm trying to get 4 more portables. We can operate as we are. We got what we could through all those other grants, but through 2 more grants this year, I'm looking at buying, 1 mobile, 4 portables, and a 6-unit portable charger. Again, through grants. But the radio systems is up and working, and it's like light years ahead of what we had.
So you're happy with the digital system?
Well, we're not on digital yet. We are still on 800 analog.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought there was going to be a big changeover, and the state was going to pay for.
There is, and there will be over 5-year period. This is a 5-year project. Our area being that we're covered by Sea Patrol for state police. This whole eastern end of the area is only analog at this time. B Troop, which covers Western Franklin County and Hampshire County, is the only part of the state that's actually digital on the Comere system. They have awarded the contract, I believe, through the company, and still working on getting that all going. Over the next 4 years, they will be building out the digital, and at that point, everything will be digital. The radios we have work both digital and analog. Certain parts of the area, certain parts of the county, we go to Western Franklin County where it's digital. We just switch a band or a bank of channels and we're on the digital. So they are digital analog combination radios. So when they do the full switch over to digital, there's no change we have to do other than switching what bank we listen to talk on.
So we won't be saddled with some, because the expense of all this, if we were paying it ourselves, would be horrendous. The state is still backing us up or backing up Franklin County.
Yeah, at this point, yep. Like I said, all those radios that we got were about $88,000 worth of radios.
Jesus.
With the upgrades, the installation and everything. And it really cost me $1,900 out of my operating budget for some upgrades and added equipment that I bought. So yes, right now there still is no user charge, and there probably won't be as long as the old UHF system is still in operation. It is right now, we're using 2 systems at the same time because a lot of people haven't got their 800 radios installed yet. They're still using the UHF, and we're still going to need that for paging until such time as a paging solution is found for the digital radios that work. Once that's done, most if not all of the UHF is going to be dismantled. We're already starting to plan on a decommissioning schedule and plan for all that equipment.
On another front, is the software that you mentioned in the operating expense line, is that is that unique to us in some specialized way, or is this software that other towns and communities have?
This is something that other communities are using. There's a couple different vendors for this type of software. One company was Firehouse. They were actually bought out. I think they were the ones that were bought out by ESO. A couple different companies were. So there's like 3 different vendors for this type of software that work with the state and the National Fire Incident Reporting System. This software will do all kinds of additional stuff. Of course, for an additional price, we only really need it for the reporting part of it, the state or federal reporting part of it. So that's only $995 a year. You can get scheduling and, all these maintenance and inspection and all that stuff. Don't do enough of that it's worth paying, $2,500 a year to have the software to do all that stuff when we don't do scheduling. We're not a full-time department where we have to do scheduling and all that. As for inspections, everything's pretty much paper-based. We have it back up on forms, but we're just using Word and Excel spreadsheets for all that stuff. Nothing special on that. So this is just for the NFIRs and MFIRs, and it's not specific to Shutesbury. It's nationwide.
Are we involved in any way with the emergency network that's going to be broadcast off of that new cell tower that's going up off of Wendell Road?
FirstNet you're talking about.
FirstNet, yeah.
FirstNet is an AT&T based thing. If people so choose to want to buy a FirstNet phone, basically what it is, it's a reduced cost for the cell phone. And the big thing about it is, in an emergency, if like the fire department had a cell phone, or everyone on the fire department had a cell phone, that's a FirstNet phone, because we're on first responders, we would get not only priority over all other calls, but it's called priority preemptiveness. Whereas if the airways were full and we as an emergency responder were trying to make a phone call, it would knock somebody else right off the system to give us priority to come into the system and make our communications. We have not, as a department, bought into FirstNet phones. One person bought one on their own. And I know the chief of New Salem has one. And at this point, till we get good coverage, it's not much different than a regular cell phone.
So we're not participating at this point, is what you're saying?
That would be an individual thing, or if the town so wanted to buy a FirstNet phone for police or fire chiefs to use. Otherwise, it's a personal buying. I could take my cell phone and trade in and buy a FirstNet phone and use it. But it's not something like the town has to buy into it unless they wanted to, get an account and buy a phone for different positions in town. It's still a cell phone.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
You were rather skeptical of this whole FirstNet system, as I recall, the last time we talked about this. Do you still feel the same way, that I guess it's sort of nice to have it there, but we aren't really interested? That's the sort of the conclusion I remember drawing from the last time.
At the last time, AT&T coverage in this area was pretty poor.
Yeah.
I know people that had gotten the phones and tried them, and they actually had worse coverage than on a consumer cellular telephone.
Yeah, but that's going to change with the cell tower.
It will change when the cell tower comes in. Yes, our coverage should be much better. There's also going to, possibly be, I don't know for sure, but there's going to be, AT&T, Verizon, and maybe there's up to 5 or 6 carriers that can go onto that tower. We'll see how it is then. And again, at that point, then if the town wants to buy phones for people, I just didn't think it was a good investment right now till it's proven out.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll remember that.
I mean,
Yep.
the only thing I will say that is on that tower that will give us as a town an advantage on the tower is the fact that they reserve spot on that tower for us to put communication equipment. And as a matter of fact, just today, I got a quote for an antenna and cabling to go on that tower for our town's, the town frequency, which the highway police and fire department use. The highway uses it. Used to be just the highway department frequency, but now everybody uses it. We use it for the emergency management. The repeater currently is sitting at town hall and the antenna is on town hall. Because of the geography of the town, once they get down near the lake, communication is pretty spotty, whereas having equipment on that tower in the highest point in town at 160-foot level, we should get much better coverage throughout the town. I was actually put a call in to Stephen Kelleher, the owner of Vertex, both yesterday and today, and he hasn't gotten back to me. Just wanted to kind of hammer out some finer details. It was never really given details of, all right, yeah, we can put equipment on there, but do we have any space in any building? Or if we do put up a weatherproof, cabinet outside and put equipment in it, do we get power? Do we have to, have a meter and supply power there? How is that all going to work? That I don't think anybody ever thought of and determined what those details are going to be, but at this point, I'm trying to work that out with him. I can tell you the quote for the antenna and the cabling is just about $2,100. That's not counting installation. We're trying to see if we can get them to, here it is, $2,139.77. That could get the antenna and the cabling, all the equipment to get it down to the ground for us. Seeing if they can work on maybe doing the installation for us. If not, I have a certified climber through my radio guy who would be cheaper than a lot of the climbers out here and be able to install it for us. Don't have a quote on that yet. I'm still trying to work out the details with Vertex Towers on that.
Are we gonna have to spend, a rental?
Nope. As far as I understand, and I never saw the final from the planning board, but basically they were as part of the, a gimme to the town, so to speak, for putting this tower in. We got a location on the tower. Actually, we have the top of the tower, the highest point on the tower. And it was to allow the town to put in public safety communications at no cost.
That's good. I remember that as being the original.
Right. Move on to the next topic. George, you have a question?
Yeah, real quick. Walter, what's your last day on the job?
June 30th, 2022,
Okay, thank you.
end of the fiscal year.
Walter, I had a question. I'm looking at this year, operating costs is running higher than track, higher than.
Yeah, there's only 35% left in the budget. Yeah.
Are we going to be okay there, do you think, or?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, typically what happens is it's front end loaded because a lot of the agreements and things like our radio assessment and fees for like Tri-State Fire Mutual Aid, Fire Chiefs Association or Western Mass Fire Chiefs and all that stuff comes right in the beginning, right in July. So we kind of get, loaded pretty heavy at the beginning. I'm hoping, the 2,497.56 that's left, I think we can make it work. Cause I said, a lot of it is front end heavy on the operating. It's a little scary at first when your first month or, after about 1 month in, you spent about half or more of the operating right away, it's kind of makes you take back a little bit, but for the most part, we've been, you know, it's settled out pretty good.
Okay, thanks.
I'm
Thanks,
hoping,
Walter.
I mean, it's hard to say, you know, you look at, you know, last year and all that. By this time, yeah, we're about the same. We probably spent a little bit less. The year before that, at this time, yeah, probably, you know, about the same as last year. So it's kind of hard to say. But for the most part, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thanks, Walter.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Walter? This might be your last time to go through one of these budget processes, Walter. You're gonna-
Yep,
you're gonna-
it
you're gonna-
is.
You're gonna miss this?
No,
No, not particularly.
not particularly. No.
No. Okay,
Thank you.
if no other questions for Walter, thanks, Walter, for the time, and
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
have a
Walter.
good evening. All right. Are we ready for library? I don't think we're quite, we have Mary Ann. We could, we good to start library, the library budget? Review, looks like Mary Ann is on.
I'm here. Are any of the library trustees here? I see one.
I saw Kate,
I see Tim. Okay. I might just not see.
Yeah. Brad Foster is there too.
Okay. All right.
Kate
Okay.
said
There's just
she's
a lot
up
of people,
here.
so I just can't see everybody.
Yeah, Kate
Uh,
just got here.
Okay. So do you want me to put my budget up or do you
I got
want to
it.
put the budget up?
I
Okay.
can do it. I got it right here.
Okay. All right.
Can everyone see it?
Yep.
So, so basically, you know, it's almost the exact same budget. The library's budget doesn't change a whole lot from year to year. The one thing we're asking for this year is a small increase in the library assistant and aid, and we called it other salaries line. So, so I haven't been fully expending that line during COVID because at the end of that first spring when we had COVID, so in May of 2020, the weekend circulation clerk left, and I haven't filled that job because you know, I didn't want to, I just didn't know how we were going to train somebody new in our small space without people being vaccinated. And then I thought I might fill it, you know, once folks were fully vaccinated, but then the grant application came up, so I got delayed. And now, so I'm planning to fill that soon so that we can resume our pre-COVID hours. And then when I looked at that budget line, I discovered that it hasn't kept up with, so that budget line pays for the library assistant who works 12 hours a week, and then that 6-hour position. And then there's always been some money in there to cover the library director's vacation and sick time. And there isn't enough in there to cover very much vacation or sick time. So it hasn't kept up with that. So I calculated out how much 4 weeks at 20 hours a week coverage would be. And that came to $1,510. So we're asking for an increase in that budget line to $18,465, and the rest is the same. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? Bob, is your hand's up? Bob, and then Jim.
I don't understand. I thought that your salary would include your benefits, including your vacation and your sick time. It doesn't.
Oh, yes, it's to pay for somebody to cover for me. Because
but-
if I'm not there, then, you know, somebody doesn't have to cover for me all 40 hours that I work. But I do need coverage
understand.
for,
I misunderstood what you said. I thought you-
okay, yeah.
Jim, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Marianne, your TAMI figure of $82,812, correct? That you've calculated for this year?
That
That number.
the minimum TAMI for
Yeah,
fiscal year
you-
23,
yeah.
in order to stay certified,
Mhm.
that number?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That number. Why can't we, in looking at the expenses that you have here and all the rest of it, why can't we apply that number directly as opposed to 84,000, what is it? 84,582.
Well, because so that minimum TAMI, in order to stay certified,
Mhm.
would be a budget decrease. And so it would require a reduction in services. And it would, and if you decrease the library budget now, you'll end up having to make up for it. They'll end up needing to be a larger increase later. So basically what I'm asking for, Jim, is a level funded budget that covers our current expenses. But I give you
Well-
those numbers that we report to the state every year so that you see them every year.
Well, I guess I don't see why we can't find it. It's the difference is so small, 82,812 versus 84. I got to put on my glasses here, 587.
Well, a couple of $1,000s in the library goes a long way. And that's, you know, that's the minimum amount required by the state to maintain our certification.
Mhm.
It's not the amount that I need to run the library. So, you know, so they're two different numbers. And so what you'd be asking me to do is to take a budget cut. And if you're going to ask me to take a budget cut, I'm going to have to reduce services.
Well, it could come from many different places in your budget. I mean,
Right. And so, yes, it would be a
Mm.
reduction in services any way you look at it.
Mhm.
You know, and yes, I haven't had that person working 6 hours a week, but I don't think there's anybody in town who wouldn't agree that I've put in way more than 40 hours almost every week. So,
What is ComNet Children? I don't
that's
recognize
the
that.
community network for children. So the Union 28 Community Network for Children is it's a school sponsored organization that's grant funded from DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we collaborate with them on story time. We haven't been offering in-person story time, but we've just started doing that. We've had it for 2 weeks. So they fund some of the story time, and I provide the venue and support services for it.
Is this money that would normally go to the school, but instead is being diverted, so to speak, to you? I'm just trying to figure out.
No, it is, it's a grant funded program that is intended to provide family networking and pre-literacy skills for preschoolers, babies and preschoolers, and then family networking up until age 9. So it serves 0 to age 9, and they work with all the local libraries. For the entire time I've been working at the library, we've been collaborating with the community network to provide story time and other programming.
Why does Council on Aging money flow to the library and not to other possibilities here in town? I'm just curious about that as well.
So I collaborate with the Council on Aging by providing a lot of programming that is geared towards people in the Council on Aging age group. And so they co-fund the programs with me. The Council on Aging doesn't have a staff that would be able to provide those programs themselves. So the library does the work of providing the programs, promoting the programs, keeping the registration, providing the Zoom link, emailing the Zoom links to the participants, and then makes the programs happen, hiring the instructors, vetting the instructors, and the Council on Aging funds the programs. And before the library was doing this, there was very little actual Council on Aging programming.
Okay, Melody?
Yes, thank you. I just have maybe kind of a basic question. Why is the director's salary not increased for FY23 or?
So we never put in salary increases.
Okay.
The personnel committee,
Oh, okay.
the way I understand it, the personnel committee works with the finance committee and the select board to determine salary increases, and then those are added after the fact if there are indeed increases.
I should have known that. That's why I said it was a basic question. Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And you would have seen, Melody, that didn't show up on Walter's
Okay,
presentation at all. So it's
thank you.
just a placeholder, I think, here. Yeah, AJ.
Yeah, Marianne, I don't know if you have this handy, but I was wondering if you had an update on your private fundraising levels, because I know that I feel like in years past we saw some information in your documents about kind of how much is currently.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go by memory.
Okay.
But so my memory is awesome, except for the times that I remember things and I'm completely wrong. So, but going by memory. Okay. So I'm going to say some numbers and then you guys are going to add them in your head. Okay.
Okay.
So, so we had, actually, I'm going to look up one thing.
You're
So
testing the
we-
finance committees. You're going to test the finance committee's math tonight here.
Right.
Mary, huh?
Okay, so
Okay.
on Giving Tuesday, the Friends of the Library raised $35,000. I hope everybody was sitting down before I said that, because to me that is astonishing. We had 193 people,
Marianne,
give donations. It was just incredible.
before you move on, could you give us a rough sense of how that has compared to like prior Giving Tuesday years?
All right, so the last Giving Tuesday, so Giving Tuesday is always the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And the last Giving Tuesday, we made $13,000. So you can figure out what percentage increase that is, okay? All right, so, but our best giving day before this was last April. And so that was Library Giving Day, which we've done several years now. It's always in April during Library Week. And we made 21,000. So, and even that, like, we were gobsmacked. The best giving day we had before that was $15,000, and we had a couple of those. So anyway, before Giving Tuesday, we had the Friends of the Library had raised 270,710. So you add 35,000 to that, and you get 300 and almost $6,000. And then, you know, and then in the town account, we have that 252,700. So I think it comes out to 558,000 saved for a new library.
Awesome. And there's going to be another one of those like specially branded library giving days in the spring?
Yes,
Okay.
and the first week of April, there'll be a library giving day. Yes.
Okay.
So Giving Tuesday, and then, so Library Giving Day, we used to do Valley Gives, and Library Giving Day replaced Valley Gives. Library Giving Day is a national library giving day. So yes. Yeah. And I can't promise we'll make more than $35,000, but we're gonna try. So, okay,
Yeah, but
yes,
everything you can do
yes.
counts and
yes,
adds up. Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Thank you.
So, yeah, okay.
Other questions for Mary Ann? Silence. I think we're good. Mary Ann, thanks very much.
Okay, thank
And,
you.
and congrats on all your recent successes your most
Thank
recent
you.
successes on the fundraising front.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, you all know where to find me.
All right.
All right, thanks so much.
Good
Okay,
night.
You
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
Night.
good night.
Jim,
Yes.
I want you to know, you probably have seen him, but Kevin Rudin is here.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I thought maybe we can move that topic up now, the tax classification hearing results topic. So we don't use up too much of Kevin's time.
And we'll probably want to touch on the recap that I will forward to everybody, but it's was finalized yesterday. And I will
Finally.
send that- Finally, yes.
Yes, the DOR
Okay.
sat on it for almost a week.
Okay, so we've got a report that Kevin put together to present to the select board during their November 30th and December 6th meetings. And I
Jim,
think-
it went to you, but I don't think it went to your members.
Well, I did. I forwarded it to the finance
Okay.
committee, so the finance committee does have a copy also.
Well, the good news from my perspective is, although values went up, people are paying less than they did 2 years ago.
Now, how do you define paying less?
The average single-family homeowner is paying less in property taxes than they did 2 years ago.
Okay,
That's
About
how I define it.
$90.
okay. Yeah,
And
that's a good
that-
definition.
That's in part due to the free cash transferred last year and to the rising values and dropping rate this year. Your rate has dropped over the last 2 years. And values went up, but when you look at the average single-family homeowner, the actual bill, and again, I'm saying specifically the average single-family homeowner, because I cannot run those calculations for every taxpayer in town. But that average person is paying less than they did 2 years ago. And to the tune of,
$90.
well, it's still less. While that average value, the average value of the home has gone up by about $20,000 over those 2 years, and they're paying less. That's pretty good. I mean, the rate has dropped $1.43 and 78, about $2.21 over the last 2 years. Pretty darn good in my book. If you remember 2 years ago, when the rate was 24.04, everybody was fearful would hit that $25 mark. And now we're at 21.83. And if I were a betting man, I would guess the rate's going to drop again next year. So,
You attribute that to increased values or?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Plus the fact, I'm counting on the assessment of the cell tower in fiscal '23. It'll be up and built.
Susie, you have a question on this
Yeah,
current,
I think it's also important to mention that the budget has been kept as low as possible. You've had tiny increases in the budget,
Well,
and that also keeps the tax rate low.
yeah, that is the reason. And in fact, I'd still point out that you've got 538,127 in excess levy capacity. Had you spent that, you'd be looking at a 24.04 tax rate again. So you're keeping spending down in the budget. You're not taxing up to the full levy limit. Plus values went up. Don't forget last year I got very aggressive on personal property, which hadn't really been looked at in the last 7 or 8 years and is now up to full value. We're also pretty sure we got almost all of the second homes paying a token personal property tax of about probably $30 or $40 a year, but we're getting them all and we weren't in the past. And next year is our research year and we'll be making sure everybody's on an even keel. Not that we're looking to hit anybody, but I mean, quite honestly, the town was not assessing properly in the past before I got here. And the chief example is the town lowered land values artificially 4 or 5 years ago and never increased them. And we increased them for the first time this year because they were so far behind. And you just can't do that. The state law is 100% full and fair market valuation. And so we're there this year and we'll be there next year. And I believe somebody asked the question at the classification hearing, and Becky, I think it was you, on what I expect to continue next year. And so I sent you and the select board, and I'll be happy to forward it to you, Jim, tonight for distribution. I did a graph showing the actual home sales assessed versus sale price gap, for want of a term, gap chart this year. And you'll see what has to get closed up next year. We still, for most of the year, sale prices were by and large very well above assessments. That continued in calendar 21, and that's what the fiscal 23 values would be based on. But where we are now, I mean, the overall valuation of the town went up 7.5%, which just about tracks to what we saw in the increases. And I said at the classification hearing, that's low for what's going on in the state of Massachusetts this year. The town I live in is up 12% on all single family homes. And I just can't wait to get my property tax bill in another 2 weeks. And to put it in perspective, this has gone on nationally. The city of Boise, Idaho, in 1 year, their valuations rose a staggering 38.4%.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
we're not Boise, Idaho, but I can tell you, we're tracking with the rest of Franklin County at about 7.5% increase. So, and again, just for those who weren't at the classification hearing, one of the things I did to mitigate that was we had enough sales to satisfy the DOR, but we went back more than a year in each category of home, Cape, Ranch, et cetera, to flatten out any possible increase and lower it as much as we could. And we're going to continue to do that next year. It follows the DOR's rules, but it softened what could have been a higher increase this year.
Yeah.
And by knowing the rules, you can do that. But I mean, commercial land, commercial values, residential went up, commercial went up 21.2%. And that's because although you don't think of it, all the Chapter 61 forestry, farmland, and open space is classified with the DOR as commercial. And they raised the amount we can value an acre of land for farms and forests. We went up 3.6 in industrial values. That's solely the Wheelock property, the value of the solar farm and the land. And personal property went up 5.7%. And that is the Department of Revenue mandating a new way of valuing electric and gas utilities. And we have 2 national grid accounts and one Eversource account. And that $600,466 is almost 100% out of valuing them the new way that DOR mandated. So, we went up pretty well across the board. And, for a town without a real commercial tax base, that's pretty good. What I'm looking at right now is we have a 150-foot cell tower being built, which is taxable, as a structure, as real estate. We have the cement pad under it is taxable, and the roadway leading to it is taxable. And as I mentioned at a past meeting, the real estate holding company owned by Vertex Towers failed, despite 3 letters from us, to keep the land in chapter land in fiscal 23, so that full parcel will be taxed at full value for the first time in years, the remaining acres on that site. And of course, they can always file it for fiscal 24 and get it, but so I anticipate right now the plans for submitted to the building inspector say they can have as many as 5 carriers on that tower. And by the way, it is written into the planning board decision that the town gets the topmost point. I know Walter mentioned that earlier. It is in the decision. But right now we have only ATT going up, and ATT was kind enough in the building permit to submit every piece of equipment they have listed on it. And that will be going to a cell valuation expert very shortly to tell us what it's worth. So, any little bit that is not residential helps lower the residential tax burden.
Yeah. Kevin, you said 2183 is the newest tax rate?
$21.83 per thousand valuation.
Okay, that's looking at my records. That gets us back to about 2015 is when the last we had a rate lower than that.
Well, you were 2261 in fiscal 21, 2404 in fiscal 20, and before that was not my tenure, but you're probably correct.
Yeah, so it seems like
And I
at least a pretty steady
anticipated-
climb. It's been a pretty steady climb since 2015, but the last 3 years, we're starting to see some reduction, or the last couple of years. we're seeing
Well,
reduction.
Wheelock was a big part of that in fiscal 20 and 21.
Yeah,
Wheelock came online, and because it came online not when they said it would, but delayed, we were able to spread the increase over 2 fiscal years. But we're not getting new growth out of that anymore. Excuse me. So now we're just getting the annual increase. I don't know if you remember last year, I said I redid the land value from when I got here, it was still taxed to Chapter 61 rate. And the land value under Wheelock is now pinned to the lease that Florida Power and Light, which is the owner of NextEra, that NextEra has with coal. So every year they pay more, and every year the value of the land goes up for the 20 years. And we dropped for 1 year when I initiated that, but now we're back over where we were 2 years ago. So every year as the pilot climbs, the real estate tax on those acreage is also climbing, because the lease payment they're paying Coles is the actual value of the land. If you go to tax court, that would hold up. So we're going in lockstep now on the land and the equipment. But the biggest growth coming in that I see, I mean, we had 3 houses torn down on the lake over the last year and a half that will all be recaptured as new houses, but it's not new land. It's just getting a higher value on the houses that were there. That's not a lot of growth. I mean, that's the bulk of what I see. Beyond that, we have, porches, decks and stuff like that. But I mean, the cell tower itself has value. The land has value. The land coming out of 61 has value. And then the biggest part is the carrier equipment. And as I said, the carrier equipment can be as much as 250, 300,000 per carrier. I don't know what the value of ATT's equipment is, but right now they're the only carrier listed on that. And that will be built by June 30th, the way they're going. And that's our capture date for new growth. So it gives us new growth for a year, and then it also goes into the permanent rate. So, I mean, absent any large commercial growth in town, we have that.
Okay, AJ, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing on the document that you had shared with Jim, who then passed it along to us. There's a chart that lists some kind of key stats comparing FY22 to the prior 2 years. And the bottom row indicates property taxes. I just want to clarify that that's the average property tax
That
bill
is the
for a single
property
family home.
tax. That is the property tax that the average single family home payer would pay.
Okay.
The only statistic, AJ, I can really come up with is you divide the total assessed value of single family homes by the total number of single family homes.
Right.
And you come up with the figures in the top 3 boxes in that chart. And the bottom is the tax they would pay. For your own self, it is the value of your house times the tax rate divided by 1,000.
Great.
But the only example you can give is that single family home value. If I start mixing in duplexes and triplexes, it's not apples to apples. So that is the one thing we can use as assessors to call out. And, we don't have an average commercial building. We don't have an average industrial building. In fact, we only have one real industrial site in town, and that's the Wheelock site. So yeah, I don't want to mislead people on how to calculate that. But it just follows straight down from fiscal 22 average to the fiscal 22 tax rate, the difference in tax rates from previous years and the property taxes. And by that calculation, that average family owner is paying less than they did 2 years ago.
Right. Okay.
And we're not trying to say anything else, but you are quite correct.
Jim.
Yes, Kevin, the cell tower is going on a 20.5 acre piece of land here in Shutesbury. And that means that the cell tower and the driveway and all of that gets taken out of that 20.5 acres of land. That would bring it down below 20 acres of land, and Chapter 61 cannot be applied to any piece of land that's under 20 acres. So I think
You're
that explains.
incorrect, sir. You're incorrect.
Why am I incorrect? That's
That land is classified as Chapter 61B recreation, minimum of 5 acres, not counting the house.
But I thought it was.
The whole parcel right now is in 61B. What will be, had they left it in 61B, they would have had to withdrawn the pad for the tower and the road. And they didn't want to do the road, but when I talked to their attorney last January, I made it quite clear that the road was coming out because the only purpose of the road is to serve the tower, which makes it ancillary to the tower. The planning board document said the road would be 10 feet wide. The clearing they've cut is 20 feet wide. They cut a 20-foot swath in. Right now, in my book, it's a 20-foot wide road. I have the wheel measurer. The day they pour the pad, I'm going to measure the shortest distance on that road to the pad, and that will be the length times 20-foot width. If they want to put the remainder of the land back in Chapter 61B, they have the right to do that in fiscal 24, but they missed the deadline for 23. That means the remaining acres will be classified the way we tax vacant land. but the roadway and the 50 by 50 or 75 by 75 pad will be valued for industrial / commercial usage, which
And-
means a higher value.
That brings it, but that brings the 20.5 acres under 20 acres of land, does it not?
Yeah, so
Okay, well, in that case, they can't classify it as chapter 61.
5
Forest.
acres, Jim, you're not listening.
No,
5 acres is all you need.
5 acres is, no, not for 61. 5 acres is for recreation and all that other stuff.
And
but
that's what it is. It was classified as open space recreation 61B. When you take away the tower land and the road, they have more than 5 acres. They can put it back under 61B.
That's
So
true.
it wasn't a forestry.
No, it's 61B
Okay.
open space. None of historical resources land was classified for forestry at all. It was all 61A farmland or 61B. The house at 212 Wendell was just sold. That whole property was 61B. The house was removed. The remaining land will remain 61B. They've just filed the paperwork. So what happens is I will be sending a letter. In fact, quite honestly, because they failed to file the 61B form for fiscal 23, and they're not using it for open space, technically the town has the right of first refusal on that road, land, and concrete pad. And I believe I gave Becky copies of my letters to them and another person explaining to them. There's another gentleman in town who owns one piece of land under his name and another under a corporate name, and he changed the lot lines, and I had to inform him, that's not the same owner, and you just took part of it out of 61. And I don't make the laws, I administer them. So the tower land was never 61 forest, ever.
Okay.
And that's not a minimum of 20 acres, that's a minimum of 10. So,
Right.
but at any rate, I mean, that's the increases I see next year. I see values going up in certain areas. I will tell you candidly, the entire lake area has been undervalued for years and will probably be adjusted in the research year of 23. And just lest anybody say anything, that does include the piece of land I own on Haskins. So it affects me negatively. I don't benefit from it. Because I get tired of people saying things like, well, and just for the record, if you don't know, when I bought the property, Leslie Bracebridge went out and evaluated it for sale and changed the house style, and my valuation went up $30,000 from the day I closed on it till the day after. So not only did I not get a bonus, I got socked.
But you got a good deal on your house.
I got a good deal on the house. I also outbid 4 people up 20 grand to get that house.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I could sell the house today for 60 grand more than I paid for it. And even more than it's assessed, but I'm not going to sell it because I'm going to retire in it. But no, I like to point it out. The lake area as a whole is undervalued. And it's not evenly valued, and that has to get fixed in the research year. I don't know what other questions you have, but I mean, from my perspective, it was a good year for the town in terms of values going up. And I believe it was a good year for taxpayers. They did not get as large an increase as other towns in the state are getting.
Yeah.
And as Susie said, through a lot of things, some of it has to do with applying that free cash a year ago. You're not taxing to the levy limit, and you're very prudent on spending.
Don't forget the regional assessment.
Well, I'm sure that played a hand in it, Bob, but
Yeah.
But I mean, spending overall did not go up dramatically 21 to 22.
Yeah.
And that's your guys' thing. You hold the line on spending.
Right.
Yeah. Kevin, any comment that you want to make regarding the outcome of the classification hearings?
Well, we never really get anybody commenting on it. But primarily, it does not make sense in a town 95% residential to split the rate.
Yeah.
It just, you know, you really, and quite honestly, since the DOR classifies 61 land as commercial, all the people that have land in 61 forest, 61A farmland, or 61B would bear a higher rate. So that doesn't make sense in a town that has so many 61 parcels. Nobody does the open space discount because we don't classify spaces open. The small commercial parcel exemption, we don't have small commercial parcels to give it to. And the residential exemption really is only good in like the Cape and the North and South Shore communities that have an extraordinarily high numbers of second homes and rental property. What we have in the lake would actually be hurting the rest of the residents in town by giving them that. So we're pretty good. I mean, the classification hearing went well. We did have a hiccup, quite honestly, in the software that delayed the hearing a week. I'll be very candid about it. I coded one of the 61 parcels incorrectly when the values were raised, and we had to spend about 3 days finding which one to bring that back into to line. We found it. We, you know, had no problem. That, you know, even though the DOR took a week after the classification hearing to approve everything, they had no questions. It just, that one parcel made everything look out of whack, and the DOR did its job and pointed it out and said, we want to prove the values till you find the problem. And, you know, that's their job. We found the problem, no harm, no foul. I spoke to Ellen McKay today by email. She knows her firm will have the tax billing data no later than Friday. And the tax bills will go out on time, one way or another.
They usually do.
I'll probably come in around Christmas time and help Ellen stuff the envelopes, just because we're a day later than I'd like. What's funny is we actually were ahead of schedule back in August, and somehow we got behind with the DOR's schedule, but you get that way. You know, no harm, no foul, everything's going out on time. I know a lot of towns that don't have the tax rate set yet. So we're in good shape. You know, anytime you can get the thing certified before December 15th by the DOR, you're in really good shape. It just depends. I mean, we have a service, calculate the bills and print them. Some towns do it in-house. We'll still make the deadlines. So I'm pretty happy about that. Obviously, I was concerned because it's the first time in 3 years I'm not there every day. You know, I am in every weekend, and I do all my email and phone calls remotely with my new schedule. But the only lesson learned on that is I think I need to be in the office a day or two when full-time when we're submitting to the DOR next year. And I've already planned for that. So, you know, that probably would have made us be a week ahead of where we are today. But like I said, we're still on time. But other than that, I'm very happy with the results. I mean, the DOR can question everything. The last 2 years, they picked apart the Wheelock valuations ad infinitum. And this year, they just looked at the 61 and actually pointed us to an error. So I'm pretty happy. You know, they did have a couple of questions because they get paid to ask that. I had the answers right off the top of my head. So they were happy. They wanted to know, we lost several personal property accounts during COVID. There's a couple of people in town with home-based businesses that they didn't survive. They may come back, but they died. And I was able to name how many and the relative amount right off the top of my head because we're a small town and we know that. So the DOR was happy. I mean, that's really what they care about. Do you know what happened and why? You know, right now, believe it or not, now that this is done, I'm already working on the new growth for next year. I've got a list of 20 properties to go out and look at that about half are done. And I'm looking at the sales throughout the year over the next couple of weeks because I don't like waiting till June to go out and look at new growth. I like getting it when it's done. So the next couple of weekends, I'll be out looking at all the stuff and see where it stands and what we can already count on, so we know where we are.
Mhm.
You know, I know we have the increased value of those 3 homes, but that's, you know, value we lost. Had not the property values gone up during COVID, you would have seen values go down slightly, you know, because we tore down 3 houses, but it'll come back. So I think we're in great shape. You know, I still think values will go up next year due to those 3 homes, the tower being built and just keeping up with the COVID values, which are starting to flatten out, by the way.
What's flattening out, Kevin? The
Huge increase due to COVID values.
Yeah.
There were 5 factors driving it, and 2 of them have gone away. And the 5 factors were the abnormally, or I don't want to say abnormally low interest rate, but the sustained low interest rates to borrow. That's still there. But what's gone away is the massive moving of people out of cities to rural areas. Like, you know, the Berkshires got inundated by New York people, as did Vermont. We got inundated by people moving west from the Boston area who drove up the prices. That's pretty flattened out and over. What we still have is building materials are still high, and that's driving up the cost of new building, which doesn't affect us that much. And we have this wonderful group called the millennials that are starting to, the older fringes are now married and having children and wanting to buy houses. And that ties into the factor that's been there all along, which is it's impossible to build a new house in Massachusetts compared to other towns. It takes a lot longer. It's a lot more expensive. We have a huge shortage of houses in the state. And the millennials are now competing with everyone else for their share of the housing market. And that's not going away. And having one of those children and his wife in my family, they're in the process of buying their second house in 2 years. Their entire development that they live in is all millennials. So they're taking away the law, you know, if you had houses for sale, they're gobbling them up. But I will tell you, we had a large number of people in 21, or actually calendar 20, which went into in calendar 21. A large number of people moved to Shutesbury from, you know, the Boston and Cambridge area, Waltham, that area, coming out looking for bigger houses to work from home. The work from home movement caused people to move out to where they want to live, not in a commuting distance. That's dying down a little bit, but it's still coming. But I mean, we still have a shortage of houses. So, you know, you don't exactly see a lot of houses being built in Shutesbury.
Yeah.
Although I did see Cindy Jones in the newspaper said if she can't build solar, she'll build houses on those 5 sites.
Oh, okay.
You know, I take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's called a bargaining chip in my book.
Mhm.
So
Probably.
anything else? I mean,
Yeah, AJ has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the status of implementing that seniors tax exemption that we talked about last year. And I
Yeah,
think
well-
we're thinking that was an FY23.
we were hoping I could tell you exactly where the legislation is. Since we last met, I've been promoted to chair the Assessors Association's legislative committee. The Shutesbury bill is sitting in committee waiting for a hearing, which is normal. It's going to go to the Revenue Committee, which after 3 months of not scheduling any hearings, remarkably has 5 full days of hearings this month. We are not in those. I expect we'll be in January's. And since it's a home rule petition, it usually gets a courtesy vote right through and out the full vote. In parallel with that, AJ, the Assessors Association filed a bill to allow any town to adopt this exact same measure, the exact same wording, by a simple town meeting vote, not a home rule petition. That bill is being heard by the Revenue Committee on, and I'll give you the exact date, on Thursday, December 30th. They're holding a hearing on it, and we have about 9 people lined up to testify from about the association. We have a Department of Revenue person, and we have 7 different assessors, including myself, lined up to testify in favor of that bill. So one of the 2 will pass. We know that's going to come out of committee. We have a commitment from the heads of the Senate and House heads of the Revenue Committee that bill, allowing it by a town meeting vote, will come favorably out of committee. So one of the 2 of them we expect to pass. And what that would mean is if ours is delayed beyond the fiscal 23 timeframe, would be able to put a town meeting article on next May to adopt the other, because that should pass by then. So, I mean, I'm tracking them on an almost daily basis.
Right. So I think if I recall, there are a number of sort of criteria and decisions that probably the select board and the finance committee are going to have to
Yes,
discuss about how that gets implemented, right? And what exactly the quote unquote discount will be. And
right.
so
Personally, I advocate that in the first year, we've asked for sliding scale of 50% of the circuit breaker exemption up to 200%. My own preference is that in the first year, any town adopting it would start at the 50% and go slow. I have a difference with some of my assessor colleagues on that, but I would rather go slow, see what the impact is on everybody. Because, and first of all, it's new. The key thing is, not that they're listing, but I do have a call with the Council on Aging in January, is that every senior should be looking when they file their calendar 21 taxes next spring, should be looking to see if they qualify for the circuit breaker exemption on their state income taxes, because that would make them automatically qualify for something locally. That means
all right,
so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, so I think for the committee, I think we should plan on discussing this issue probably in the spring or whenever one of these 2 bills is passed, right?
It's probably going to be right during your town meeting preparations or immediately after them. Because if it does pass and we can implement it for 23, the applications would be due in August. So we'd probably want to get together right after the town meeting and talk about the hows and whats, assuming it's passed by then, talk about the parameters of it and how it would be implemented.
Wouldn't we have to make an estimate of what it might be and how it'll affect the amount of funds that we have to raise from taxes when we present the budget?
It does not affect the amount of taxes you have to raise. The amount of taxes stays the same. What it affects is how people pay for it.
Yeah.
If you remember, every residential taxpayer would go up slightly to offset this, because this exemption does not come out of the assessor's overlay.
So on our schedules, it's going to look the same. Okay.
Right. The alternative is if you went off the assessor's overlay, we'd probably ask you for anywhere from 100 to 200,000 more in overlay, which is 200,000 less for town services. And so that's the reason why we went with this version, is it does not affect your 2.5 cap at all. It does not affect the amount of money available, which right now, every auto excise tax abatement we give out, every exemption we gives out, that money comes from the assessor's overlay, which is raised through taxes. So we deliberately went with a version of the circuit breaker that does not do that, because while you'd be giving seniors a break, you'd be taking $100,000, $200,000 out of the budget for town services.
So when you're doing the recap next year, you'll have the information. How will it affect the tax rate?
Very simply. In fact, so many towns are doing this. The Department of Revenue built it into the online forms we do this year. What it basically does is we would know the total amount being offered as an exemption to anybody who qualified. So let's just say, make up a number, it's $50,000. Instead of coming out of that overlay, that $50,000 is looked at almost as if you passed an override, and I hate to use that word, but think of the way you calculate that. It's looked at as an extra charge on top of everything else and how that raises. So, you know, if you borrow money for a school, you're able to tell people that's costing you 10 cents on the tax rate this year. We'd be able to say, okay, right now the tax rate is 2183. It might be 2184 instead to pay for that. And you would tell people the 1 cent extra on your tax rate is to pay for that exemption for X number of people.
In your example, $50,000.
I just made up a number. So-
Right, but in your example, the increase in the tax rate is the amount to cover the amount that
$50,000.
is, yeah.
Kevin,
Oh,
any idea how many people in town, I think you mentioned this data before, qualified for the circuit breaker program last year?
the last time we looked, it was somewhere around, I'd have to look at the PowerPoint.
I think there
I'm-
was 15 or 17.
Yeah, no, that's getting the exemption. I want to think it was somewhere below 50.
Well, that meant,
You gave us
That
a
was in the
number
teens.
when we discussed this last year of,
Yeah,
I'm just looking at my notes.
The
It was
problem is-
2017 and it was 29
Thank you.
residents received the
Thank you,
credit.
AJ. See, the DOR used to keep track and they stopped in fiscal 17. So we knew the numbers for every city and town up till then. And they were keeping track for some legislative reason and they stopped. I've asked them to go back and report what last year's was, what calendar 20s was based on people paying their income tax. And, you know, it's sitting in a pile on somebody's desk because, you know, I don't have the clout to get somebody tasked to do that. But I'm getting the association to ask as well, because we're doing it. But what did we say, 29? I
Yeah.
would hazard a guess, you're somewhere around 29, 30 people
Okay.
potentially could do it. However, not all of them get the full circuit breaker, and not all of them may meet the town's test.
criteria.
The Board of Assessors has the right to establish rules that don't impose a higher burden to kick you out than the state does. But we can specify, and it was in our law, you've had to have lived in the town 10 years. You know, so somebody can't just move into town, retire into the town and say, oh, I qualify. You know, we know the proof of ownership. We could track that back fairly quickly. So, I mean, the best way to get an estimate is to hope that the Department of Revenue can give us the calendar 20 income tax figures and tell us updated numbers. And other than that, we go with that average. I mean, that's how we calculated it. And the other thing you can do is let's say it's now 50 and we don't have the stomach for 50 people. We can tighten the rules up a little bit and the income levels up a little bit with our own guidance to say, you know, we only want to do 25 people for the start. I mean, the true hope for this is that we're helping the really neediest in town. And the income level for the circuit breaker should guide that. But, you know, for instance, there is an exemption where the Board of Assessors has the power to waive all taxes for somebody in catastrophic need. We haven't had to do that in the 3 years I've been the assessor, and no one's applied. In the other town I'm working in, it was given out to 12 people this year. And the Board of Assessors there really scrutinized the people's needs versus, you know, income and expenses before giving it. you know, my hope is we're being able to lower the property taxes substantially for the really needy in the community. And I mean, you know, I don't want to name names. We all know there was a person living on Wendell Road who lived in a home without running water, without naming names. I think most of us know who that person was. You know, who got, I'd say 98% of her taxes were gotten rid of through exemptions. That's the kind of person we're looking at. We're not looking at just handing it out to anybody who qualifies. They have to show a need. You know, but if 17 people qualified for that exemption, that's a potential 17 people or 29 people. I'm sorry, AJ, I just have so many numbers running in front of me.
Yeah, it was 29.
Okay, it's a
in
potential
2017,
29
yeah.
that it could be. And you know, I don't think it would have grown much more in the 4 years since then.
And presumably not all of those meet the 10-year living in town that you
Right,
requirement
and
that you
also
said,
not
yeah.
all of them will be getting the full exemption. So
Right.
let's say the exemption going into next year for 21's taxes, it was 1150 when we put the proposal together. Now it's 1170. Okay, not everybody who applies to the state gets the full 1170. So let's say somebody got half of that, and we say 50% of what you got. It's not 50% of 1170. It's 50% of the 6 whatever they got, or 5 whatever they got, 570 or whatever it is. I don't do math on the fly very well without a calculator. So we wouldn't be giving somebody 50% of 1170. Hang on. We'd be giving them 585 on top of the 585 they got.
Got it.
Well, that's at 100%. So we'd be giving half of 585.
Right.
So you don't know that yet,
Right.
because they have to submit their income tax returns with that form for the circuit breaker to the Board of Assessors. And then we know what amount they got. And then we put together for the select board and you guys, if you gave everybody who qualified 50%, this is the hit on the levy. If you gave them this percent, and nothing says, by the way, that it's 50, 75, 100, 125. There's nothing to stop the select board one day from saying, let's give them 52%. And then we calculate the effect. So there's a widespread variant in there, you know, and
Well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but it doesn't mean we're not preparing the way of calculating in the procedure. I mean, I pretty much have an application drawn up that the board hasn't looked at yet because we've been busy with the tax rate. But I assume after January, we'll look at that and say, what if it passes? And that's a one-page form that says, you know, you give us this, you fill this out, and it says how long you've been living here, where you live, yada, yada, and we need that income tax return.
Okay.
And just so you guys know, anybody applying for an exemption, the only people allowed to see that info as to their financial info is the board, and it remains locked and then destroyed under the state's destruction guidelines. We can only release that we gave an exemption of X dollars for this address. You know, we won't even give the name. You can find it, but we're very concerned about things like that.
Okay. We need to wrap this session, this part of our meeting up. Becky, did you say you had something early at the beginning of this? I thought there was something you wanted to touch on.
Well, the recap is out and I forwarded it to everyone. Well, Kevin was presenting other things, and the tax rate has been set, which Kevin has covered to some degree. Kevin, I didn't know it tonight, Jim, we've already spent a lot of time. I don't know if you wanted to go through the recap with Kevin or ask him to come back another time.
I have no problem coming back whenever you want. I mean, the recap basically has everything you need to know because it's income in, income out. You know, what we projected for anticipated revenues. You know, there's 4 pages to it. Page 4 is the town clerk certifying whatever expenses were done at town meeting, whatever overrides the town has. 2 and 3 are done by the accountant, and it's projection of money going out, money coming in. And page 1 is all the stuff about the values and the breakdown of the values and what percentages. I will just tell you that the percentage of residential to commercial, industrial, and personal property remained unchanged from 21 to 22.
Yeah.
So Jim, what do you want to do? Do you want to ask Kevin to come back and schedule him for the next meeting, or?
Yeah, well, first, did you say you just sent a document to us?
Yeah,
Becky, that's-
I have it
that's-
ready to go up on the screen if Kevin wants to walk people through the recap.
No, Personally, I'd rather let you guys digest it, formulate questions, and ask me back.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, I think so. I think,
Because
For
one,
purposes of
it's already 8
digesting-
o'clock on your schedule, and
Yeah.
and 2, candidly, I haven't eaten dinner yet.
yeah. Yeah,
Thank you for coming, jumping in, Kevin.
I agree that allow us a chance to digest the information, and then we'll add this to the agenda for maybe our next meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know, if it's not in the next 2 weeks, maybe by then I'll even have a guesstimate of new growth. Because I'm just starting to go out this weekend and look at what's been done. And I'm trying to make a projection on that tower.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, Kevin, thanks very much for taking some time tonight.
hey,
And-
you know, I'm always available. You know, you know, Becky has my cell phone. Any of you guys, well, I answer email all the time. So, but if you ever need me, you know, just contact me. You know, that's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
All right,
Kevin.
guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Kevin.
Have a
See
good
ya.
night, all.
Thanks
Good
very
night.
much.
Good night.
Okay, we had an item on our agenda for regional school follow-up, and that was going to be a follow-up from this prior Saturday, but we did not meet, so I don't think we need to touch base on this one. I think what we heard most recently, Becky, is maybe January 8th, maybe the next town.
Was it the 8th?
Yep.
That's what somebody put out there. I don't know whether it was Doug
No, I
or,
think it was the first Saturday in January. That makes sense. Susie?
Yeah, that was true. And I have to revisit the minutes because I found an error that I didn't flag earlier. So that's why my hand is up.
oh, okay. Yeah, so we'll wipe out this regional school agenda item. And Susie, do you want to bring that up now just to?
Yeah,
Do we need to reopen the discussion on?
Yeah.
On minutes?
yes, I apologize, but on the committee reports,
Yep.
number 7, the budget represents a 2.48% increase.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, done.
Thank you.
Okay. MVP action grants. Becky, you sent something out that this is a committee, there's a group working with the select board.
The select board is yeah. So we went through a process starting in 2020 to write a municipal vulnerability plan. And many people from various committees and boards attended these meetings and assisted. That we talked about our vulnerabilities moving into climate change. Highway was there, planning board was there. We had feedback from, the Conservation Commission and other boards about projects that potentially would help the town be more resilient and adapt to the changing climate, like the air conditioning at the school. Once, if temperatures get higher and higher, we've been able not to have air conditioning at the school in the past, but many people in town are putting air conditioning and split units in to provide air conditioning, like we've done in town hall for police and financial people. So it's right now we have the opportunity as a town to make an application to the MVP and to follow up on these projects, or at least apply for a specific project or maybe two specific projects. And to try to jumpstart that and get this done, the select board is requesting that all our major boards and committees select one representative to come together at a select board meeting and do brainstorming, reviewing the MVP report ahead of time and being familiar with what projects are listed there, and to have discussion what is most important for the town to move ahead with at this time. In future years, it's hoped that this new version of the Energy Committee, that will also be a climate change, Energy and Climate Change Committee, will take the lead on prioritizing projects to ask for grant money for. But for now, that committee will not be formed and up and running in time to put in a grant application for this year, which has to happen. We have to figure it out in January, and the deadline is, the drop dead deadline is the beginning of February, but if we can apply by mid-January, we have a better shot of getting funded. So that's what the select board is looking for, one person from each committee to come to this meeting and brainstorm, having read all the materials.
Is there a date set for that meeting? And
It will be
January 4th.
is a time, January 4th, and is there a time?
I'm not sure, Susie, I'm not sure if we're going to keep to that schedule. It might have to be the next meeting.
Okay.
So we're hoping for January 4th, but that date could change.
Is this like a regularly scheduled select board meeting where this happens?
Yep.
Or, okay,
It'll happen at that meeting.
okay, so whoever represents us needs to be able to be available for a select board meeting, probably early January or possibly later in January.
Yep.
Okay. Does everybody understand what the mission is? Yeah, Bob. You're mute. You're muting, Bob.
Let's see. What kind of commitment is this going to be, Becky? Is this going to be some kind of a long-term project, or is it going to involve a lot of meetings, or?
Like I said, it'll probably be 1 or 2 meetings, and because the application has to be in, and the decisions have to be made in January 2022.
So this is just for the application to be submitted? Not
It's
for,
to go through the reports, to go through the MVP report, which is substantial, and whoever volunteers needs to have read through the whole report. And there are some folks I know who have already done that, and others who don't know what we're talking about. But the report is available on the town website. And I think it's a useful report. It gives good summary on current issues that the town needs to respond to.
This is I think the report is attached to your email about this, right?
Yep.
yeah, so for me, I'll have to read the report, and, we'll have another meeting when's the next meeting, Christmas?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? We could do that, Bob. I think we're scheduled for the 21st.
Yeah,
School
so
committee.
So a week from tonight,
yeah, so
we're
we'll get
scheduled.
together on the 21st with the selectmen, though, aren't we?
And the school committee, it's to review
committee.
the Shutesbury Elementary School budget. And the meeting is for the finance committee and school committee will be over by 6:20. 5:30 to 6:20.
Well, I'll have a look at that document, let you know what my views are about.
Well, I think we're looking for folks to commit tonight,
Okay, well,
because the committee has to vote.
Okay, so we need to digest this report and then be available to participate at a select board meeting in early January.
Mhm.
Whoever so chooses to represent us. Susie's hand is up.
Yeah, I would volunteer unless somebody else would want to do it.
Is there anybody else interested in joining in addition to Susie? Sounds like Susie, you're it. You're up. You're the
Alrighty.
one.
So do we need to make a motion and vote?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion to appoint Susie as our committee's representative to this committee.
Second,
I'll second that.
Arvanitis, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, aye.
Osier, aye.
Walton, aye. Okay, expense report. I think Susie or Becky, you sent us a report just around the time of the meeting, and we also have one from just about 2 weeks ago. So
Right, so we're it's clear the finance committee meetings are lining up with the
Yeah.
reports.
yeah, but
Um,
anybody that would have gone through the report from 2 weeks ago might have some questions
so
based
we,
on.
my understanding is folks would want to go through the report that they got 2 weeks ago, or when was it? 2 weeks ago, right? Is it December?
I went through this one today. They're not materially different. I didn't have any new questions. I had the same questions, so I don't think it matters.
Why don't you start, George?
Was that?
Why don't you start then with questions? Yeah, I was going to suggest that, for most, I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at tonight's, but, so for me, it would be 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's,
But somebody that has been able to digest
well,
tonight's, then they can work off that one. So why don't you start, George, with your questions?
yeah. So in the last one and also this one, it's the same question on the very end of page 1, the very last item, the building's telephone. And then the following line on the very next page, the building internet communications.
Yeah.
If you look at the building telephones, we're running 58%, but on the internet, we're at 26. Becky, does it look like the bills might be getting a little mixed up in terms of the allocation?
I think the issue is we're trying to find the right split between the two accounts.
But between the two of them, do we have enough money, you think?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's my real question. And then looking at the police budget again, this one is reflected, but I also noticed it on the older one. If you look at the police wages, and we probably talked about this in the past, I apologize if we did, but it looks like the police wages are running ahead of the normal year's rate by about 5%, 4%. And I'm just wondering, are we expecting any kind of issues with the police department, or are we gonna have control over that in some way?
Yes, because what can happen as we sort out, because currently we would be able, if there's any issue on the total, Kristen's wages can be charged as acting chief, can be charged against the chief's salary line. And some of it has, and as you see, but not her full, just we started doing it late. I think we only did it for a short time, but we have the backup of shifting her, which is the highest salary, out of the wages and into the chief's line.
That's perfect, because you have.
That would
tremendous-
explain it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of capacity there. They've only spent 11% on that line.
Right.
And
So
then the
her
other-
wages for the rest of the year will come out of that chief's salary line then?
I
just to
believe they will.
clarify.
Yeah.
Right, okay, got it.
The other one I had, again, on page 2, under police, if you look at the cruiser maintenance, it looks like they're just about 80% as of yesterday or today spent on that cruiser maintenance. And I'm wondering if we're gonna have a problem there.
Hopefully not, but it could happen. Kristen discovered that none of the cruisers, all of them needed brake work, and as well, I believe she took care of getting new tires through the end of last year and then started going through the cruisers carefully this year, and she had to do major brake work on, I think, all 3 of them. And I do want you to know that the Crown Vic died on Halloween. It started spewing a lot of smoke and had a major, it was not drivable after that event. And it's been taken to Tommy Clark's. So that cruiser is no longer in town or a part of this thing, and not much money was spent on it this year because of concerns that there would have to be so much money spent. It would be better to auction it off. But before we had a chance to auction it, it became drivable. So
When you say Tommy, what does Tommy Clark's mean?
Junkyard.
the junkyard over
Okay, okay,
on
So
Pratt
it's-
Corner Road.
okay, so it's buried and gone. All right.
But we're
Well, you
down to cruise.
probably could spot it if you drove by, but it's,
By the way, that's another industrial property. Kevin didn't mention.
not sure if it's industrial. I think it's definitely commercial.
Commercial.
I don't believe industrial.
So we're down a cruiser, Becky?
No, we kept that one on. That's Tom Harding's old cruiser. Which his last year, he had requested a new cruiser. No, that wasn't his last year. Anyway, that was it. We kept it on after Tom left in 2018 because we had all the details that were coming up for the fiber internet in town. And we used it almost daily throughout the construction period. Instead of putting any hours on any of our new cruisers, that was fully utilized for that purpose, continued to be used for details and as a backup transportation cruiser when they needed, when the other cars were in the shop. But it served us well as a fourth, hub. But it's, we try to maintain 3 cruisers that are in good shape and fairly new and operational.
Oh,
You have to pay maintenance or registration or insurance on that vehicle anymore, which is good because it was an extra cruiser, really. It was meant to be gotten rid of, but it ended up sticking around because of the fiber network.
And it served us well and saved a lot of miles on other vehicles.
Okay, but RIP, Crown Vic.
there we go.
So I had another question. I have one last question on page 3 at the bottom, the last section, the very first item in the last section, contributory retirement. Looks like we've overspent that account. And are we gonna have to make a transfer for that, or is there something else going on?
We are going to have to make a transfer. The estimate that I got from Union 28 was off by that amount. So I'm
Okay.
going to have to come to the finance committee for a transfer.
And we still haven't signed the last transfer, right?
Jim Hemingway has.
It's sitting in a,
Yes.
I forgot, I thought, sorry.
yeah, we need to, it's in the finance committee mailbox in town hall.
Yep.
It's there
Okay.
now? Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
when it's there. when
Anybody,
you-
Melody, did you sign it? Oh, no. Okay.
You can stop by tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.
Stop by.
It's always helpful when you put it in, if you just send out a quick note. Otherwise, I just forget. I know, I don't, I apologize for that, but I will forget. So I'll try and come down tomorrow.
I'll try to send you an email tomorrow, George.
Yeah, I just, when you put it in there and send it to the FinCom, right, then we all know. And I'm not criticizing, it just would be better for me.
George, I picked exactly the same items on the expense report as you did. Yeah, we're just together on this one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, good, yeah, but they were the
Wow.
ones that stood out.
Yeah, they did.
That's scary.
Just stand
We're
up.
all thinking alike.
One thing I don't understand that you didn't answer, like, so I could understand it, Becky, was why we have 2 accounts, one for internet, one for phone. Don't we get one service from Crocker for both of those things?
They're billed separately.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we're different than the rest of the town. We had Crocker 5 years before the rest of you did.
Yeah.
Would it make sense though for the future to collapse those two lines just since?
Well, we've been
This-
trying to get the right balance so we know for sure the difference. We've had we still have some Verizon phone accounts. We have three Verizon phone accounts. Anyway, we're trying to hit the right balance, and hopefully this year will clarify it. And if you want to collapse it, that's fine. But we separated them out as we went through the transition years.
By the way, I had Crocker.com for my dial-up.
Beautiful.
Wow,
The
a
older
lot
day.
of people did.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Wow. All right. But Susie, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yep, did we have a number of what we might expect contributory retirement needing to be bumped up? Do we have a sense of what that might be?
All right, what? It's
So-
right here.
Number,
This
Becky
is
said.
fully billed for FY22.
Oh,
Are you
it's
talking
okay,
about-
so it's just the difference, it's just the 1,283. There's nothing else gonna come in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
I understand.
I didn't get a good estimate from Union 28, so.
Okay, I didn't know what the amount was. I get it.
Okay,
Okay. Anybody else see anything that raises questions? Jim?
Well, you mentioned Union 28. Has Bruce Turner's replacement been found yet? Just out of curiosity.
I spoke with Bruce today. He said a woman has been hired who had been working, I guess she's still working at the technical school in Turner's Falls.
Oh,
She has no accounting experience. She is a math teacher. And she did take the test and pass. You have to be accredited by the state to do this job, I guess, for finance, as a finance director. So she did pass the accreditation that is required. But so hopefully it'll work out.
Hmm.
And there will be no overlap with Bruce. She is not starting until January 3rd, and Bruce's last day is December 23rd,
Oh, boy.
which I think is unfortunate because just knowing where everything is and what everything is
How the
when,
systems work, the apps, the software, for sure.
Hmm.
Hopefully there's somebody in the office that can help a little.
yeah, Emily, Bruce's assistant is wonderful, and she will do a lot to help with the transition, I'm sure.
Good.
She's very helpful, and she knows what's going on.
Okay.
So they'll need it.
Susie?
So is that, was there a very small pool of applicants? Are we talking about the same thing we hear on the news, that there's a shortage of workers?
There were 2 applicants, and they offered the job to the other person and were turned down.
Do you know why? What was it?
Well, the other-
time,
I
the
don't
money?
know.
Mhm.
So the answer is yes, there was a small, very, very small pool of applicants,
Yeah.
which has been the case. I was on the hiring board probably 8 or 12 years ago, or maybe, yeah, about 12 years ago. And we went out 3 different times. Jen, or the person who was the superintendent at that point was requiring that we bring 2 candidates forward. And the first 2 times we didn't have 2 candidates that were qualified. So we couldn't even bring them forward, and we had to go back out. And it took 3 tries.
Hmm.
It's a difficult position to fill. It's a difficult position to do. I mean, because of the 5 towns, 4 schools, and the Union 28 entity on top of that. So instead of having all the autonomy you have in a district, like you do with a region, the regional school, everything's in one basket. The job that Bruce has been doing as finance director, there's 4 different schools doing things in 4 different ways. Getting, there is some overlap with, they have shared special ed and things, which really, really helps. But it's a very complicated job.
Becky, do you think part of that is because the salary competition for people with that skill is, are we offering a reasonable amount relative to the market?
I don't know what they offered. So I can't tell you.
Those raises, George, $15 now, so going through the whole labor market.
But I think it's also a bad time. Usually, and Bruce had originally was going to resign at the end of the year, and typically the hiring for admin people for schools starts in January. And we're we're asking somebody, if they're currently working, to up and leave halfway through a year, which is not usually what superintendents do and finance directors. They usually finish up a year and, they start an application in January for the next school year. So I think it's because of the starting time is also lowered the number of people available with qualifications. But we are going to have to wish her well and wish her good luck, because it's.
Was Bruce having some kind of problem? That's why he left early instead of waiting for the academic year to end, or just was his time to retire? Or
He was eligible, and he was eligible to retire earlier, and he just changed his mind and decided to go earlier a few months back.
Yeah.
So.
I guess that's what's been happening commonly throughout the country. A lot of people are just, it's pandemic blues or something.
The quitting,
Yeah.
the quit rate, they call it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Broke
Yeah.
records 2 months ago.
Look at Hagen Bakery in Amherst. He told me he took 9 weeks off because of the pandemic lockdown. And then he and his wife decided they enjoyed a lot of it. And they were willing to make financial sacrifice to continue to spend more time with their family and at leisure and in the garden and so forth. I think that's happening commonly. It's really having a pretty broad effect on the labor market. So
There's going to be a boomerang effect to some extent.
Anything else on the expense report?
It
We
looks
move on
like
to
the health
committees.
insurance is running low.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It looks like the health insurance is running low. I'm gonna talk to Ryan about that.
So does the school. The elementary school is running low too.
Well, they'll catch up on that one. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I kind of expected that, but okay. I kind of expected that would. That's what I was thinking about on some of these others too.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to point out, Becky?
That's my big one.
Okay. All right, we want to move to committee reports. Anybody from committees have anything to report? Susie, you have something?
Well, the school committee meeting is on this Thursday, but I received the draft for the elementary budget, and I sent in a list of questions, and I haven't heard back from Bruce. I can imagine it's kind of busy there, but I'm feeling maybe I should send the list of questions to the other FinCom members in preparation for next whatever.
Yeah, next Tuesday. the
Next
21st.
Tuesday's
I
meeting.
think it was at 5:30.
Yeah,
believe.
5:30
Yeah.
to 6 something.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're
so-
meeting with the school committee before then, aren't you, Susie?
well, I'll be meeting with them tomorrow night, but these are questions. So when the draft was brought out, we talked about some clarifications that would be helpful. And then that was the night I got it, or I got it the next day. And so then I looked through it and came up with a list of questions. But I guess I feel like I've looked at what other finance committees view the role of a liaison. And in general, what I hear is that, my job is to be very familiar with the school committees, what issues they're dealing with, the way the budget's organized and to get clarification. So that's what I was trying to do, but I haven't heard back from Bruce. So then I'm thinking maybe I should share those questions with our committee as well.
Yeah, Susie, I'm not sure if you will hear back from Bruce. I mean, I'd send him another email and ask him for the status. I think, I think it was a huge task for him to get all the budgets done early. And now he's got 5 days left and he's trying to sort through things, but I would reach out to him. I'd send him an email tomorrow or tonight and ask him if he's going to reach to that, because it might be he can't.
Bob,
Susie, I think it'd be great if you shared your questions with us, just because, some of these things may or may not have occurred to us too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to see if my questions are on it.
Yeah, I've got questions too. and-
Yeah, I feel like there was some questions that, would normally be in a process to answer, but now it looks like the process is disrupted. So I'll send the questions out to you. I'll send an email to Bruce. I sent him 2 so far.
Yeah. Well, Bruce will be at the meeting, and if he hasn't answered them before, he'll be able to answer them then.
Yeah, they're not that kind of question, but I will try. I'll see what I can get done tomorrow. And everybody received the draft of the FY23 one, right?
Susie,
I sent it out.
if I may, what would be helpful is when they showed up next week, if they had explanations for their really big their big increase lines. It's all in salaries. They've got huge increases in salaries. I know that we received a schedule of how some of the school choice money was going to be used. And this 188 doesn't tie to that.
Right. And in that little discussion, identifying where exactly the school choice money is was part of what we were talking about. It should be written in the line, because he's actually got ESSER and school choice identified the total, but not to the specific positions broken out. So that's the kind of questions I was asking.
Yeah, and then the other piece, if I may, just real quick, is we know that there's some one-time components in here. There's a big teacher salary increase. I know that there's one-time components to that. There's a position that's temporary. They noted that in that document I referred to earlier. It would be very helpful if they could break that out in either a separate schedule or just let us know what that is.
Right.
Because on the surface, this is a scary looking budget.
Well, they're invoking some of the other funding.
Yeah, no, I understand. And we just need to,
Right.
I want to be able to break out the ongoing reoccurring operating expenses.
Right.
And, separate those from the one-time expenses, and then to what extent are those being funded by the,
Right.
yeah.
So the actual increase to us is 2.48 or 55,455 or whatever that is. So the gross numbers there, but the revenues being brought to it bring the increase down to 2.48.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking in
anyways,
terms of-
I'm sure that if he can answer the questions, otherwise, see what I can get out of tomorrow, Thursday's meeting, and I will send you the kinds of questions I was looking at.
I just want to say something because I know I couldn't communicate with the committee by email on this, I don't think. So I just wonder whether some of the items that are supposedly short-term could be funded, A, through some federal grants or state grants, or B, funded through cash or some other mechanism. We've done that in the past.
Well, that is marked on some of them. So
I'm just saying that's something that I thought about immediately when I looked at that 9.15% increase. If some of these changes are indeed short-term and temporary and somewhat related to the pandemic, then maybe there's a source of funding from pandemic support that could be utilized. And if not, maybe we should find another way to soften the blow.
right,
But anyway,
so
that
they have that there. And
Well-
I just wanted to be a little bit more broken out, but it says this is coming from ESSER, which is pandemic money. This is coming from school choice, but it's lumped together, and I'm sure people would want to see it identified more specifically. I know that the idea of having Nature's Classroom is still on hold because the way the pandemic is playing out, it may not be able to do that. So it was a hope, and that's why she had it on her projection, but it's not in this budget.
Okay, good luck, Susan.
Great.
Yeah.
Why don't you make the report for capital planning? You took the minutes, right?
Yeah. I didn't take minutes, but I do have some notes. Michael did the minutes, but so we, capital planning has this request form that went out to the departments. We got responses from 5 departments, school committee, library, fire, highway, and police. Some of the highlights, I mean, there are a bunch of things the school submitted that we've heard about, including the gym roof, sliders, HVAC. But they had some other items in there, but those I think are probably longer term, like future projects, not this year. The library is going to request their annual $25,000 allocation for the building fund in the event they don't get the MBLC grant. Obviously, if they get that grant, then that request will not happen. Fire department, I think we saw this on Walter's budget too, is requesting an SUV for the to be hired fire chief. Highway department is looking to replace a 20-year-old dump truck. It's going to be significant cost. Let's see, and then police has 2 items that they've requested: an electronic speed board that looks like that would have a cost of about $3,800, and a new cruiser. So these were the kind of the preliminary asks on the form, and then we've got 2 meetings scheduled with with those department representatives to discuss the details of their request. Bob, did I
You got it
say
perfect.
anything? Okay.
Yeah, Susie has a question.
I thought the highway truck was gonna be an FY '24.
That's where it is on the projected plan.
Yeah.
They're
And
asking
that
this
sounds
year.
right, they're not needing it sooner.
Well, yeah, we haven't had a chance to talk to him about it.
No,
but that-
they are.
They are asking
this
for
year.
FY '23, but
Oh, okay.
you're right that it's on that sort of long range capital planning document. It
And
was
those years,
anticipated.
yeah,
So
those
they're
years,
estimates.
the years that are listed are estimates.
Yeah,
They're,
I understand that. I just didn't hear it got moved up. I hear it now.
yeah, and Tim is leaving in September, so I think he's trying to leave his department in good shape and fight one last battle at town meeting.
So Tim is leaving, wants the $300,000 truck. Walter's leaving, wants a $50,000 cruiser, SUV. And we already had Mr. Fernandez leaving, and he requested a $50,000 SUV for the club. So I don't know. It's a lot of money. Anyway, those are the requests.
Have they been re-upping the long-term plan? That was it a 25 or 30 year? Is that sort of up to date, or are we still looking at a prior
It
years?
needs more updates. I haven't gotten it done yet.
We,
That's on you, Becky, or is that on the capital plan committee, or
Both.
Both?
Usually capital plan, I do some of it and they look it over and change some things. Or ask for, they increase values if we go too low. Like, who knows what this new dump truck is gonna cost? I've heard some are running, and I think as Steve Sullivan threw out, it could be as much as 300,000, but I've also heard other towns getting them for 250. So the prices are going up, but it's, it's tough to be consistent on what we estimate when we're going 10 and 20 years out.
One
But
thing,
we have great, that's why we changed them, and it's a living document, and
Yeah.
the capital plan will review what's on there now and suggest changes, I'm sure, because they usually do.
one thing we did send out with our questionnaire and our form, we requested from the departments to list what they saw as long-term requirements. So we should have some more information with this round that's up to date from that point, from their point of view.
Okay. We good on capital plan?
All right.
Any other committee reports? Personnel? No?
We haven't
No?
met since the last meeting.
Yeah.
Just wanted to ask Becky about, to clarify or to give me more information about the HVAC at the school. You had some things to say that I didn't quite get at the beginning of the meeting. The funding for that was supposedly coming out of government grants. That's what I was thinking. And
We are hoping that it will for the
the heating control,
the capital part. The engineering was passed at annual town meeting.
right? So we signed him up yet? Is that underway? Or
Yeah, he's working on a meeting date, and I've just sent him the plans of the building. He asked for those.
good?
So,
Yeah, and we want to get him to come up with a plan, or at least a sort of an outline of what a whole building ventilation system might be. Because, and let me just say this, if the town decides for some reason to go and get AC for the school, having a whole building ventilation system would be something that could be integrated with a cooling system. So it's something that would have to be borne in mind if that was going to be somehow an option for the design. Those systems would very well be integrated.
yeah,
we-
they have to be, because some don't work at all.
But we don't have a whole building ventilation system now. We have a kind of a jerry-rigged one, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, the valves are stuck open to the max, and it's
Yep.
not ideal.
So it's time to reorder, but hopefully we can get some major help,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for us.
And we're not dependent on the MBLC.
Good.
I'm sorry, that's the library, the MB authority.
Right. We don't
I
understand.
know who you met.
Susie has her hand up, Jim.
Yep. Sorry, Susie.
That's okay. Are we running into a shortage of engineers and HVAC installers? And because that is the focus that the ARPA money and the CARES money really went to, is that part, is there a backlog because of that?
I don't think so. They were, once we evaluated the different quotes that we received and called the first one that was the best choice, he's following up and doing the work. So I don't know about equipment shortages. I know that the school roof for the gym roof has been, the weather is doing everything we could have prayed for, but the darn materials are not showing up until January.
We don't
So-
have a job for Christmas now. It's out.
Right.
Supply chain issues are really, really tough.
Yeah, and that was after sorting out and going through, they were having to make some kind of change to one of the layers, one of the materials, which got approved, and that was all worked out, but then a different piece of the, what is needed cannot be delivered in time, so they can't do it until April.
Are there any ramifications for getting the job done the worst time of the year? In terms of cost? I don't know, in terms of quality. probably,
we have signed extensions with no cost increases.
because that's a tough time to be doing a flat roof, no doubt, especially if we get a snowstorm.
We're due.
Right, but they can't do it.
Yeah.
They-
No, I can't do it if it doesn't have the roofing, I guess. I don't know
Right.
what he's thinking about, but
That's the issue. They don't have the materials. They were all lined up to go. And they got word that one of the major components is not gonna make it.
too bad. That's awful.
Yep. Especially when the weather, I mean, we have.
Yeah.
We can have a,
But great. Well,
Chris-
it's
Sunny and warm.
bad, but, you know,
Okay, can we wrap up or does anybody have anything that we need to raise? Are we
There we
good?
go.
I'll make a motion.
Tim, can you just clarify, we've got 2 meetings on the schedule, right? December 21st and then 4 towns on January 8th. Is there anything else?
January 8th isn't official yet. Is not
Okay.
yet. I think they're aiming for January 8th. Is that right, Becky?
Yeah.
So that's not a firm meeting.
Okay,
date yet.
got it.
but
Okay.
the other
But
one,
not-
the FinCom calendar, I think it was the 28th of December, and we're not doing that.
Yeah, we moved the 28th up to the 21st to accommodate the
Okay,
meeting with the school.
got it.
school
Cool. I
group.
just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
So-
right now, we only have one meeting scheduled,
good.
right? All right.
All right, so we'll see you on the 21st then.
Well, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
George?
Arvinetti, say.
Here I.
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walt and I. We'll see you all a week from tonight,
Great.
5:30.
Right.
Good night.
Should be
All
fun.
right,
Good night.
have a good one.
Bye.